When you think about the meaning of the word hobby, built into the concept implicitly is the assumption that it's something you'll get better and better at over time. Even if you think about collecting paintings as a hobby, where you just buy something and put it on your wall, there's a sense in which you expect you're going to become more refined, more sophisticated. There's something you're going to learn. You're going to accumulate some kind of talent, ability, or knowledge that's going to make, I don't know, buying and selling paintings a hobby you're more and more proficient at, more expert at over time. Your appreciation of the hobby, your appreciation of the art form will let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about arcade sticks. Okay? There are four types. There are four types of arcade sticks for you to collect, own, use, modify. And we're going to get into the types of modifications, what you should do. Okay? The first classic arcade stick modding project I took on is my best. And it doesn't get any fucking better. That's it. There's no evolution after this point. Okay? Like, there's no further level of sophistication or enjoyment that's possible. So as you see, this is so I can play two-player with my girlfriend, right? And this is a modern housing. This is not a classic retro housing, okay? And then I've put into it a Sanwa JLF stick, Seimitsu ball top, and these are two spring-loaded Seimitsu buttons. A lot of people don't know that. Some Seimitsu have a spring built into them. Some do not. This is the strongest strength of spring. And that's it, bro. That's it. There's nothing further to aspire to after that. And we'll talk about the technical differences. But it's not like I can say to you, wow, and over the next 5 years, what I really want to do is get a joystick that is this. There's some further level of accomplishment, attainment, sophistication possible in arcade sticks. No, that's about it, bro. You can know Sanwa, you can know Seimitsu, you can know the differences between Sanwa and Seimitsu, you can know how to put them into a nice housing, and that is about it. Okay, 4 types of modding projects. The one that takes the least imagination and is the least of a hobby is just to buy a professionally made, finished joystick. So I know the aesthetics here are retro. Like you can see, the style of it is retro, but there's nothing retro about this. This is a new made in Japan brand, and this is all Sanwa. So the buttons and the stick, Sanwa. So for a lot of you, again, depending on your needs or your interest, you could buy this one stick and then never buy another one. If you have a girlfriend, you're going to have to buy 2 or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But again, it's not really a hobby. This is just a purchase. And then whatever. This, again, all of these are covered with dust. For you guys, I can literally see a layer. I never use it. It's really only been 2 or 3 years since I plugged in this particular joystick. Okay. Now, again, I'm not hating on you, but the same way, if you just buy an expensive car, I don't really see how it's your pride and joy. If you inherited an old car from your grandfather and you spent time fixing it up and modifying it, now I get why you feel pride and joy. This is a car where you did the work. If you build your own car from scratch, right? Oh, I didn't think of that. So, Melissa, could you? Sorry, that's the other category. The black joysticks with the yellow and silver buttons. So, do you want to just grab me one of those, Marina? My lovely assistant will get. It's running off camera to get another joystick for me right now. Okay, sorry, because that's comparable to building your own car from scratch, and then you feel some kind of pride about it. So, okay, so this is one category. Buy something ready-made. You don't put your own blood, sweat, and tears into it. All right. This is the category that you're going to find most of the talk on the internet about. Whether or not it's you is another question. Okay. This is buying, again, huge layer of dust. This is what happens when you buy a really classic joystick and you pull out all the components and you replace them and modify it. So this was a lot of work. Just mentioned, there are different concepts behind different joysticks. I'm going to talk about that. There are not that many options. My idea with this joystick was to actually have the smaller button size for my girlfriend. My hands are much, much bigger than my girlfriend's hands. And if you check it out, you see that's a full-size arcade button for the action buttons there. And this is actually a daintier, smaller size of button. So I thought, okay, it'd be nice for my girlfriend, and we talked about it, to have a joystick that's really for her hand size. And obviously the aesthetics, this is a pretty cool, pretty interesting looking joystick. So the plastic housing is classic. Nothing else is. That's why, by the way, these don't work. The original joystick, this was these were buttons for a Super Nintendo. This too, but these are just today. These are just cosmetic, right? I had to get a soldering iron, pull out all the circuitry, pull out the PCB, as we say, pull out the circuit board. The cord is new. The plug is new. This is a USB. It's all custom. Everything. The buttons, obviously, right? So you get a contrast between transparent and this nice. That's a Sanwa button. That one in particular, right? And this is actually a Seimitsu joystick. You can hear the click sounds different. Okay. Here's the problem, guys. And most people on the internet are not going to be honest with this. Okay. It's a lot of money. It's a luxury. Okay. And the final product is not luxury quality. The parts never really fit together. So I'll give you an example with this. The travel distance, the distance the joystick travels, it's not the same for left and right. It's not symmetrical. It's not perfect. Now, some of you can write in the comment section, you don't know what you're talking about, that they spent $400 getting just the right classic Dreamcast stick and using a glue gun and getting the sticks that are just right. Yeah. I know there are exceptions. I know it's possible to take a classic housing, and the word housing is really the right. It's really just the plastic housing. It's just a casket you're talking about here, and to sync a current generation Seimitsu or Sanwa stick into an N40 it's possible. Okay, but what the websites don't tell you, what discussions are going to tell you, dude, for 99% of people, you're going to end up with something that just looks beautiful on the shelf and the functionality sucks. It's never as good as this, never remotely. So if you own just one of these and one of these, you're going to use this every time and you're never going to use this just because of things like the actual centering and function of the stick, which is kind of fundamental. All right. So there's a huge fucking minefield there. I just want to mention one other technical aspect. When people talk about a stick being compatible with Seimitsu, so it's the sort of thing I was Googling, right? Oh, can I put a current generation Seimitsu? Oh, there's more than one. There's more than one type of Seimitsu, right? And a few millimeters of difference, like a difference in the depth, a difference. Oh, you think you could understand? You think you could compensate for that? In this case, I had to hack away at the plastic endlessly. I had to remove plastic. Ultimately, you have the stick visible through the bottom there with no gate. This is with no gate, so that you could fit every centimeter. Some guy on the internet said, "Oh yeah, bro, it's no problem." Oh, it's a problem. Okay. So again, even with current gen sticks, like even if you buy something like this, so this I've modded to put in some current Sanwa and Seimitsu buttons. All right. People will say very casually, "Oh yeah, it's no problem. You can replace the stick with anything." Oh, it's a game of inches. It's a game of centimeters. You have to be very, very careful. Okay. So look, I already made one comparison. This is taking a classic case, a classic housing, and modding it to put in modern components. 99% of the time, if you just want it to sit on the shelf and look beautiful, do it. Look at that beautiful Capcom logo, beautiful color scheme, right? This is my creativity. But you're never going to fucking use it. You're going to use this because this actually works, right? And this is a brand new. This is not classic. This is brand new USB based joystick. Okay, but you know what the other fucking option is? And this is even more humiliating for this whole fucking hobby. You can just buy an intact classic joystick and buy an adapter so that you can use it with a USB system. So this joystick, this is all classic parts. I did not put in a Sanwa Seimitsu. I did not replace the buttons. This particular model, which is called the V7, it's also called the VF, which is an error because people think the number 7 looks like the letter F. Totally understandable. V7 or VF. There's a 4-button model too. There's one with 4 buttons instead of 3. You think I can improve this by installing a new Sanwa or Seimitsu stick? You think I can improve this or replace the button? Oh, I can ruin this. Right? I can make this so much worse. I can make this as non-functional as this easily. It's a game of inches, guys. 1 millimeter off, 1 millimeter wrong. You can ruin it. And I don't mean aesthetically, like functionally, right? So for a lot of people, again, this ruins the hobby for you. Buying a classic joystick and just getting an adapter to make it USB, that's another category out of our 4 categories, right? And now I think my 4th and final category, I mean, I've already held this up. So this is a modern stick modded with other modern parts. I don't know if that counts as category 5 or what. That's not really what the hobby was. The other approach is to start from scratch. Again, this would be, so if this is like buying a classic car and changing the engine and modifying a 50-year-old car or something like that. So this is, right? This is just buying a classic car that's still in good working order, and you just fill it up with gas and go, right? That's it. That's not changing anything. Just by click, right? Okay. This is building your own car from scratch. Okay. So before I had this plastic housing, and I have 2 of these that are identical, so we can play 2-player. I have 2 that are completely identical in every way. I built this with a shoebox. You can take a shoebox, put holes in the shoebox, put all the components in, test everything works, whatever you want to use, whatever circuit board you want to use, what have you. Okay. And that's it. There is no further horizon. There's nothing further you can really improve on from here. Both of these are a mix of Sanwa and Seimitsu parts. Over time, I've completely lost patience with the competition for Sanwa and Seimitsu. I didn't feel that way, 3 years ago, whenever the last time was I made a video about this. Today, I really am one of those guys who says, look, there's just no point. Why bother with Chuanba, which people call Quanba? Why bother with Hori? This stuff is just a waste of your time and money. Are there clone parts, imitations of Seimitsu that are just as good as Seimitsu? Yes. Do you want to spend the time finding them? Unless this is your business. Like if you own a factory, no. But yes, there are factories in China that will make a stick just as good as the Sanwa JLF. And I remember one website, they were giving you like x-rays of the parts. They were like, look, this is a cross section of the switch on a Sanwa JLF. This is the cross section. Here's a really detailed graph showing that the size of the metal plate is exactly the same. You're probably not. You probably just want to pay the extra $10, get Sanwa, get Seimitsu, and there's nothing better to hope for. Now, why would anyone own more than 2 joysticks? So again, I have 2 like this. The other one, they're kind of color coordinated, so I can play 2-player with my girlfriend. And I own 2 joysticks that look exactly the same as this, as has been mentioned. Why would anyone want to put in the time and effort to own multiple arcade sticks? Like just why own more than 2 for 2-player, or why own more than 3 or whatever it's going to take? A totally good question. And there is an answer. The answer is that you might want to own more than 2 joysticks because there's more than one type of gate. Okay? So actually, because I've actually modded so you can see the bottom, the gate is what restricts the motion of the joysticks. This is looking at the joystick inside out and backwards, right? This is in effect a circle gate. This is in fact no gate at all. There's no gate on this. So this can move. If I move it in a circular direction, it moves around in a circle. This joystick is, we'll use this one. This one is a square gate, which is what the vast majority of people choose to use because they grew up playing Street Fighter 2 in arcades. So if I move this into the bottom right corner, it stops in the corner because the gate, which you can't see, is a square. I move it up, it's in the top right corner, top left. So if I try to move this in a circle, it doesn't move in a circle. It moves in a square. If you love that, if you're happy with that, great. I'm not trying to force you to use another kind of gate. People who grew up playing Street Fighter 2, who are a huge percentage of the market, they prefer the square gate. However, I've got to tell you, for the majority of ordinary people, the best gate you can possibly use is a circle gate. There is just, just give you an example. Think about a game like Zelda, whether you think of Zelda on the NES or Zelda on the Super Nintendo. I don't play any of those games. Think about a shoot 'em up game where you're flying a spaceship around, flying a helicopter around with an overhead view. Or for me, I don't know, any of the Sega Genesis shoot 'em ups where you're a person walking around in space. If you're a little person walking around, it doesn't make sense to move through space with this square gate. What makes sense really is to have a free-flowing circle gate. But you're playing King's Quest. You're playing like any kind of normal video game. What really makes sense is to move through space with a circle gate, where you're not running into what's literally a restriction when you hit the top right corner, bottom left corner, etc. For most games in most genres, circle gate is what you want, and circle gate is hard to get and expensive for no reason. So for most people, your choice is either square gate or no gate at all, which resembles a circle gate, but then you ain't got no gate. Then you got metal coming into direct contact with the bottom of the stick. You can, again, I just am putting out the warning. Why do people own multiple sticks? This is getting at the reason. For most people, this huge number of people who are into this hobby, most people in the hobby are aware the type of stick they will use for a game like Street Fighter is not the same as the type of game they will use, type of stick they will use for R-Type, for any game where you're flying around in an airplane, for a game where you're walking around with an overhead view like Zelda. So that's already two types of stick. So they want a square gate for one, and then either a circle gate for the other, or an octagonal gate. A lot of people are into octagonal gate. It's pretty close to a circle gate, but circle gate is smoother, obviously. Octagonal gate has kinks and corners. So they want either octagonal gate or circle gate for that. And then the other big category, right, is having a diamond-shaped gate. Nobody calls it that, but sorry, you probably know what I mean by diamond shape. That means it's restricted in four directions where you can only do up, down, left, right, where you can't do diagonals. So I'll say further, there are two types of this kind of restriction. One, the Pac-Man style. It's not that it's impossible to get a diagonal input. It's just that the stick will naturally slide from up to right. So if you have the stick up and then you turn right, where you'll slide the stick and it can't go into the corner. It can't go into the top of the corner. Some people grew up playing Pac-Man, or some people care a lot. They're passionate about games like Pac-Man where they only want four directions, up, down, left, right, and no diagonals. Okay. There's actually an even more restrictive four direction gate, which is really especially associated with Donkey Kong, because in Donkey Kong, being able to do diagonals at all is considered cheating. So that's beyond using a diamond shaped gate, where in that case you have to. So with a normal diamond gate, you can slide directly from up to right. You can just slide along that, but you can't go into the top right corner. But with the even more restrictive four direction gate that's used for games like Donkey Kong, and some people want it just because it's really old fashioned, like they want it for Galaga, other really, really old games. No offense. That you can't even slide between positions. You must go down from the top into the center and then press right. So for me, that's horrible. I wouldn't want that. But there are people who want that as a separate joystick. Now, again, we can add a few more categories here. What if you want to play Arkanoid? What if you want to play Breakout? What if you want to play so-called paddle games? That kind of game. That's going to be another joystick. So now if you have two of each, if you want to play each of these genres, two players, now we're into like 16 joysticks already. Now you have a huge collection that fills out part of your apartment. And that is what a lot of guys get into. Now, what if you want platform-specific joysticks? You want to play Dreamcast, and you want to have a joystick that actually has the plug-in VMU, the visual memory unit, with the separate tiny second screen for Dreamcast. Okay, now you need another two joysticks. What if you want a Sega arcade-themed joystick, and you want a separate Nintendo-themed joystick, and you want a Namco joystick? Oh, so I didn't even get into it. There are guys who are enthusiasts for Tekken, so they want a Tekken joystick. Even this, this is really the perfect joystick for emulating Sega Genesis. You really can't, again, in terms of a hobby, there's no further horizon. There's no further level of sophistication to get to. Sega Genesis, this is ideal, right? But there are people who want a joystick specifically for Virtua Fighter, specifically for Tekken, specifically for those 3D fighting games. So button layout as well as the style of the stick itself. Okay. So now you have a garage, and it's completely devoted to your arcade stick collection. So look, guys, that's about it. I was incredibly idle during the coronavirus years. I have coronavirus right now. If you couldn't guess, I'm just coughing. We have coronavirus again right now. The coronavirus period is not over. Probably this video is now going to be banned because I use that's word. It's going to be restricted. But it never occurred to me to get into this hobby. When I was a child, once in a department store, they had a display set up for the Neo Geo AES, the Neo Geo home system. And I remember, so we could figure out what age I was. Probably I was 11. That'd be my guess. I walk up to this display for the Neo Geo AES, and you know what it is. So it's a home console, but they have it bolted down so nobody can steal it. And I didn't even play a game on it, but they had that jet black arcade stick. And I think nobody knows whether or not it's actually Seimitsu, but either of those are made with real Seimitsu parts or they're knockoff imitation Seimitsu. When you take apart classic joysticks, a lot of them have Seimitsu inside. It's just not marketed as such. You actually have to take off the housing and look at the switches to find out that it's Seimitsu. And I remember I just stood there. I didn't even look at the screen. I didn't look at the game. It wasn't just that. I just stood there, and this was probably for 30 seconds. I stood there and I looked at this and touched it, this jet black Neo Geo joystick, which, by the way, those actually have the smaller size of buttons that I showed you. They don't have full size arcade buttons. They have this size of button. Interestingly, and to me, this was just like an ideal of industrial design. And in that moment, I recognized, in the transition from the 1970s to the 1990s, something had been lost. And here I was stuck at home during coronavirus. To say stuck at home is an understatement. I was in Taiwan. I was living in Taiwan. I suddenly had to go back to Canada. We enrolled in university classes. Then the university closed down, which we didn't know was going to happen. I'm in this unusually idle period of my life. And it's like, you know what? I'm so sick of living in a touchscreen world. I'm so sick of interacting with the world through a laptop computer and a cell phone. And there's something about that steel on steel reactivity. There's something about that simple ideal of the classic arcade stick that I experienced as an 11-year-old boy standing in a department store once. I never owned a Neo Geo or anything like that. And for me at that time, yes, it was worth a couple $100 to get into this hobby. But I had the assumption that, like knitting, it's something you get better and better at with time. You know what I mean? You learn more, you get more sophisticated, be more rewarding. And the truth is, no. My first modded arcade stick is my best arcade. This pair, and there's no way to improve on it. There's no further horizon. There is no higher level of sophistication to be aspired to in future. And yes, trust me, there is nothing more I could possibly buy.